Okay, it's been a little while since I've done a live stream. Um, and even my last recording was a few days ago. It was like a week ago, I think. So I want to show you a little bit of what I've been working on. Um, so the last thing that I was done with was you could place doors. You can click on them and you can open and close them. That still hasn't really changed. But there's a couple other things that I've done. So if you actually that shovel's gonna be hard to get. So one thing that you may have seen is there's now a little bit of grass, and it looks terrible because it's programmer art, but it's functional. You can walk through it, but at the same time, if you hit it with an object like a shovel, because why not? It now drops items, and you can pick them up, which is sort of exciting. And of course, this is very not. No, you can't dig out the dirt. Okay, that's good to know. This is very beta, obviously very alpha, and then you can okay. So you can't place it again. But anyway, so you can dig out the grass and you store it in your inventory, and eventually you'll be able to place it. Something else that you can't really see right now because it's too slow is I actually updated the solar rotation, the sun daylight cycle, so that it would be more not realistic, but more plausible. In any case, I've made it so it takes 3 or 4 minutes to go in a full day cycle, but it also isn't uniformly moving. And by that I mean, if you were to just have the sun go in a full circle around the world of the game, you'd have about 12-hour days and 12-hour nights, and given that nights are sort of boring and eventually going to be a bit dangerous, and not very common in games to have it be half and half, I changed it so that it actually, when the sun sets, it actually speeds up a bit. And this was actually pretty fun because I got to work on. I discovered something called the Lagrange polynomial, and this lets you match a n-dimensional polynomial to that many points. So basically, I modeled different hours of the day, different positions for different hours of the day as points, and then used Lagrange to find out how to interpolate between those points. It turns out that the math library I was using, the Apache Commons Math already has something like this. So I wrote my own implementation, and then I looked for a standard implementation, and it turns out that I already had it. So that was pretty cool. And something else. So I had a good brainstorming session, and I think this game is not just going to be sort of like a basic Terraria clone, because I never wanted it to be that. But I think one of the key aspects of it is going to be trains, and there's going to be some sort of the world is sort of I don't know, not abandoned, but very desolate for some apocalyptic reason or other. Haven't really decided that yet, but this is the very beginning of a clearly terrible, but otherwise this is about the size of a train car that I want there to be, and for each train car you'll be able to this will be sort of the starting skeleton, because once you start introducing something like a train car, train cars are sort of confined. And so I was trying to see, well, how do you enable the player to keep building and building structures and fortresses and all that stuff while still um, constraining them a little bit to a medium, specifically to a train car. And so this is there's the top, and then there might be like little sidebar things later on, and the wheels that don't do anything yet. But basically, you'll be able to place like doors and background tiles and other sort of furnishings inside this train car, and you'll be able to specialize a train car based on what you put into it. So it won't just be a train car with stuff in it. If you make a train car and you put 2 beds in it, for example, then it turns into a residential car, and there'll be certain benefits. There'll be sort of like set bonuses for like, hey, you have like if you put the more beds you put in the same room, then the more sort of sleep bonus people get, maybe up until a limit, and then it sort of like starts dropping off if you try putting 10 people in the same car. But like between 2 and 4, then you get a set bonus, and beyond that, maybe it starts working backwards. But there's also going to be like, like a little smithy. So like in real life, train cars are specialized. There's for transporting liquid, for transporting vehicles, and like grain, and horses. But that's too, this is like imagine building like a city on top of train cars. And there was a movie that was done like that was a little bit like this on Netflix. Train that never stops going. And it's post-apocalyptic. Snowpiercer. It was cool. Anyway, that's not exactly what I was going for. It's more like you have sleeper cars where people can sleep, and you have like foundry, like blacksmith cars where you can have a person who makes, there'll be an anvil and maybe a little stove sort of a thing. And various other sort of crafting centers and little entertainment centers, and I don't know, just whatever the player wants to build, because the game still is going to be sort of you build a small fortress or tribe or city or whatever you want to call it, a community, and you'll be able to build this up, and you'll be able to take them with you. So when you're going from area to area on this sort of overworld map, you'll be able to bring your fortress with you. And there's a few other sort of world building aspects I'm thinking about. It turns out that trains, like in the early days, were not actually pulled by steam engines. They were just pulled by horses. And so you could have a horse that pulls a single train car. And so if you only have 5 train cars, then you need to have five horses, and they can only go so far per day before they get tired, stuff like that. But basically, like throughout the game, your goal will be to find and find and repair and incorporate new train cars that have sort of been abandoned and scattered throughout the landscape. And maybe some of them will have some supplies that they come with. And you'll find new people, you'll find new resources, and there'll be an end game somewhere in there. But throughout the course of the game, you'll build up more and more train cars and more specialization, and you'll be attacked, and you'll have to have like you can have like a caboose that has like cannons on it and stuff like that. There's just a lot of possibilities there. And also I was thinking like real train cars don't want to be too tall, I think, because they'll crush the tracks or because they'll tip over if it gets too windy. This game doesn't really... I might draw the line at realism at some point, where rather than having like 20 train cars long, because that could be sort of inconvenient. If you had 10 train cars long and then like stairs up to a second level, there are double-decker trains. So I don't know. I think more than 2 might be sort of ridiculous. Like there's no tunnel that would ever possibly fit these things. Anyway, so that's that's sort of where I'm going with this, which is why there's now a train car here when previously it was very not 1700s, 1800s. I have there's one other thing I've been working on, and that is more crafting. So with these things, when you craft them, they just immediately place, and they're small enough that you can conceptually, like realistically, you can carry all the supplies on your person at once. But sometimes you'll want to craft things. Like I always thought it was ridiculous that you could, in like Starbound, you could craft a bed and then you could carry multiple of them in your inventory. Like there's you want it to be fun, but you also want to be like, what sort of person could carry like 30 beds around with them? That just I want to draw the limit somewhere, and so to that effect, eventually I'm going to have each character have a volume, like the inventory limit will be like a volume limit and a mass limit, so that they can only carry, or a weight limit, so they can only carry so much stuff. And some of these things, if you want to craft a forge or an anvil, you're not going to be like, oh, let me just carry around like 200 bars of iron and make an anvil. That might fly in some games, but I don't see any reason to sort of force that unrealisticness onto the player. Anyway, so point being, there's going to be a category of sort of large items, and for now, like there's going to be like beds, and there's also like a grass bed that you can place. Notice that it snaps, which is nice. You can also place it in the air right now, which is less nice. But it's half opacity, and then if you place it, it becomes 3/4 opacity. And again, this is just a prototype, sort of a view, but it's going to eventually will show all this data. It'll be what resources it needs to actually place, and how many has been added, and how many it needs, and also the name of that resource. Maybe it'll be a tooltip later on, but maybe the icon will just be bigger. In any case, most things that you place will take 2 to 4 different resources, and then you can click craft, and then it'll take a little time to whip that up. If it's something easy, then it might take just a few seconds, like a grass bed. You could say, let's say it takes like 5 seconds. But if it's something that's more elaborate, something that like a carpenter would realistically do, like a full bed, then then you'll be able to I'm thinking you'll be able to click craft, and like it'll be sort of turned into a work order, and someone will come over and work on it, and you'll come back and it'll be like a day later they'll have finished it, because like that's another little thing I'm going to experiment with. What if crafting wasn't instantaneous, and it wasn't really crafting, it was more like building, where like in various like real-time strategy games, it takes time to build something, but at the same time, as soon as you take that concept and you call it crafting, and you put it in the first person or a third person or whatever platform or game, then suddenly you can craft everything instantly or within like 2 seconds. And so long as you're the one doing the crafting, that makes sense. You don't want the player to sit there for half an hour while they craft something. But if it's someone else, if they delegate it off to an NPC, there's no reason for it to be so fast. And so, anyway, so eventually you'll get a craftsman of some sort, and they'll be able to make nice furniture for you. Anyway, so if you click craft, it becomes opaque, and this is where it stops. Like nothing else happens here. Also, this looks terrible because I made it, but there's like a little bit of fresh grass. Normally, grass is made out of I think it's like the tall grass, and then you cut it like with a scythe, and then you let it dry, and so it sort of looks a little bit like hay. But the player does not have that luxury. This is very fresh, damp, buggy grass. Anyway, so there's the grass bit here, and then there's like a little part for your head, a little pillow thing, and eventually you'll be able to sort of like make camp and sleep in this, and maybe fast forward until morning or until the next encounter, and recover your fatigue. But one thing that is not correct yet is if you do placeable and you click place and you hit craft, I had no grass and I had none of the requirements, and yet I was still able to place it. So I'm going to work on that right now. Okay, so these are called unfinished placeables, and so now I'm keeping track here. Here's the let me zoom in. So here's the craft button. Oh, I was experimenting with disabled, and disabled will prevent you from clicking on it, but it won't change the UI at all. You can still click on it, you still get the click animation, and so it's not really, I don't know, I guess I should still do that. Anywho, when you click craft, all it does is remove the unfinished placeable component entity from the entity that you clicked on the craft button for. And I have a listener in place here. Where was it? Oh, this is... I wasn't finding it because it's not modeled correctly. Okay, so basically this is the placement here. And when you first place the entity, then it sets the sprite's alpha to 1/3. And then... this is when you're... Not when you're placing it, but when you're sort of selecting where to place it. And then install is what happens when you add it to the world, when you click and you place it. It sets the alpha to 2/3. And then I add a listener for whenever any component is removed, which is not what I want. It sets the alpha back to what the original alpha was when it was first passed off to this class. So what I actually want to do here is how do I keep track of which component is removed? Okay. I guess it's not going to let me do that, but what I can say is if the entity no longer has unfinished, whatever. Like, you don't actually remove or add components that often. Like, the only other time that I do something like this is when you're picking up an item or adding something to your inventory. So, and then I can say you know what? I should do that, but I'm not going to do that right now. I should unsubscribe the component listener here so that once it's placed, it doesn't have to worry about checking this anymore. But okay, let me make sure this still works. Okay, so this is 1/3 opacity. That's 2/3 opacity, which you can tell because you can sort of see the player's feet through it. Okay, now it's fully opaque. Okay, so it seems to be working still. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled programming. Sorry. So if you click on, I lost it. Okay. If you click on craft, what we want to do is we want to make sure that this doesn't actually get removed unless you have the requisite resources. So also, it'd be nice to update this. Right now, it's hard coded to 0. Oh, sorry, this is really poorly named. I'm going to call them ingredients because really they should be called components, but components is already overused, so I don't want to overload that name. Something else is this is a map of the unfinished placeable component itself keeps track of the required ingredients, and this is like the key here might be grass item and the value might be 5, but it doesn't actually keep track of what you have anywhere. Like you don't need to bring all. It sort of defeats the point if you can bring all the items at once. Granted, with the grass, like the grass bed, I think you actually can just craft it in one go because grass is not that heavy or unwieldy. I mean, like it's sort of unwieldy, like if you're trying to like carry around a hay bale or something. This is maybe not the best first example. Anyway, so I'm not going to worry about this guy right now. So what I'm looking for is the player. So I need to query the player's inventory. Do we have access to that right now? No. Okay. So I'm going to do what I do in other places, which isn't great, but I mean, it works fine because there's only ever one player right now. This is a little tricky. Like you have to figure out who clicked craft. Like if you have 2 players and they have 2 input devices, then you have to say like, okay, someone clicked craft. Who is the user of that input device? And then does their inventory have the required stuff? So anyway, so in game initializer, this only works because this is not an engine. This is not an entity system. Normally, you have to wait until the entity system has been added to the engine. So, and this is an entity system right here, as you can clearly not see. Anyway, so if you do this, we actually want to do late init players, and it'll be an immutable, an unmodifiable array of entity. And so now, in added to engine, which we already have, now I can say players equals this thing. And so what this lets me do is anytime I can say players.first, that will return the player. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to grab the player's inventory. And we want to see if they have, if at the current time they have everything that is required for this thing. So I can never. Okay, so one of the other things I did last Friday was I took all the terrain crap and I rewrote it because like I had sort of 1.5 implementations of terrain, and now it's fixed. There's a, I mean, this is sort of boring to you maybe, but exciting for me because it's working now. So I'm using Toml, which is it's a configuration language, and so now I'm defining dirt, the dirt thing that you see on the screen, the main terrain. It's now defined entirely right here in text, which is an improvement because when there's mods later on, those mods can just be text as well. So that's sort of cool. And plus, just this is not the sort of thing that should be in code anyway. So you can see, the sprite comes from here, and these are all the different keys inside the sprite. This is sort of interesting, actually. This is a little bit harder than I was expecting, but you have top left based on what neighbors the object has. Vertical solo is if there's something above and below, but there's nothing on either side. There's a lot of duplicates here, but for wooden walls, it's a little bit more interesting. And there's also rotation because there's a lot of like an L shape that's different angles. And there's also background, and there's things like when it drops as an item, what does it look like? And it's more descriptive. And this took me all day, and it was a huge pain, but it's totally worth it now. However, I have not yet done the same thing for items. So there's like 2 or 3 sort of like half data models floating around, and it sucks, and I need to fix it at some point. So anyway, that's a long way of saying I don't actually know what I'm looking for in this items class, in this items thing. Like when you, and unfortunately with Ashley, like it's really hard to inspect. Like if you have the debugger going, it's really hard to see. Like it's all bits. It doesn't tell you like what the actual values are. Anyway, so if I look at the player pickup system, the player pickup system is like when you pick up grass, it goes through this point. And there's, again, this is the sort of crap I'm talking about. Like there's weapons, blocks, and items, and these should all sort of be the same thing. Like weapons are a little bit different because maybe you want to automatically equip them, but you don't want to do that with anything else. I don't know. I haven't fully decided on that yet. But there's item type, and there's item type is various interfaces. Notice how there's a grass item here. Again, like there's classes for this instead of like something more text-based. Okay, so anyway, so I'm gonna like we know like this thing here is gonna be grass item because grass item is the actual, like there's grass, which is the things that are placed into the world. Then there's grass item, which is the thing that is placed in your inventory, and they're different. They're related, but they're different. So anyway, so let's see. We want to iterate over. We want to iterate over the ingredients, and we want to make sure that they has all ingredients equals. It defaults to one thing, and then I'm going to set it to something else. For ingredient name, quantity, and ingredients, if inventory. Oh, actually, this might be a lot easier than I was thinking. Okay, so here's the problem. Is like there's terrain and there's item type, and it's not actually either of those things. You know what? I'm gonna set a breakpoint here, and I'm just gonna see what happens. Okay. I always do this with breakpoints. I always have like way too many. Go away. Okay. Continue. And grass is supposed to appear on 20% of the tiles, but it is very surprisingly hard to come by. Okay. I glitch harvested that grass. Okay, so now if I click craft, okay, so Kotlin is a little buggy sometimes, and it's super frustrating. Like, there's supposed to be a check mark here, and there's not. Like, there's no, I don't know if it's because it's an anonymous in our class or what, but in any case, the breakpoint isn't actually ever gonna get hit. So, okay. So I'm gonna just assume that's the problem. And, well, it needs entity. So I'm gonna say, like, another sort of thing that's a bummer that's missing from Kotlin, like, if you're in Java, you can pretty much just say, you can like go here and hit F6 and you can move it, you can promote it to a nested class, but it's like just not supported yet. So we have to do it by hand, which is not, it's not that bad, but I like it when it was one click. Okay, so this is a change listener, not the Java FX one. Constructor, implement all the things. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So now we're gonna move all this up here. Okay. There's another thing with Kotlin. With Java, by default, it's a static inner class, or it's by default it's an inner class. And you have to add static to make it non-attached, and it's the opposite with Kotlin. It assumes you want a static class unless you say inner. But whatever. Ingredients is this thing. Yes. Okay. Perfect. So now if I say, I should just sort of do this anyway because anonymous inner classes, I don't know. I guess if they're short, they're not too bad. But this method is already like the entire length of the screen. Okay. So I can say craft button listener here, and the entity is that thing, and ingredients. Okay. I'm gonna hope that this works, but it might not. Who knows? Oh, it's making my life difficult. Why do you not want to... Okay, maybe... Okay, we're gonna have to do this the hard way. So inventory here has, like... Maybe I should just add a dump inventory method. So there's various item type components. I'm just going to hard code this for now. I'm going to see like player has how much grass? They have no, not the problem. Inventory. Inventory dot count item or grass item. See. Why are there two of these? Great question. I don't know. This is a item type, and so let's see if this works or not. Basically, I'm gonna. Yep, I gotta. One of the other things that I was. You notice how the shovel was not hitting the ground correctly? And one of the things that I added was previously your weapons would run into things all the time, and it would actually cause problems for like walking around the club because the club drags on the ground a little bit. Anyway, so now instead of your weapon sort of hitting whatever you stumble across, you now have to, when you swing it, when you lift it up, it's not sort of collision enabled, but as soon as you start your down chop, it or whatever, like whatever the peak of your attack is, then it can hit things. For the club, that's going to be when it's swinging down. For the shovel, eventually you'll be sort of like making sort of a jabbing motion with the shovel. But you know, at the end of the jab, like or halfway through, you'll be able to hit stuff. I was planning on making it so the shovel would actually point towards the direction your cursor was pointing. Okay, there I brutally murdered that piece of grass. So here it says the player has one grass, so that's what we want. The only thing that's sort of unfortunate now is if you look at this. I don't think these two things, like, if these things lined up with each other like they would logically do, that'd be easy, and then we could sort of get on with our lives and wrap this up. Yeah. This is like one of the little things that's been bothering me so far. Just the physics is just of the invisible arm that's attached to the person. Not very good. Yeah, so the ingredients, this is so weird. The player pickup system, item type component dot item type. So the item type, so you pick up a grass item, and where's item type here? I'm going to set a breakpoint right here just to see what's going on. Yeah, so there's some amount of me floundering around. It's just sort of normal. It's like, what am I doing? And I periodically like want to go back and fix all that crap, so I'm not floundering so much, but not today. So the item that got picked up, like, oh, I guess you actually can see what it has. So it's just a grass item. But the grass item's name... No, that's not very helpful. I think the grass item is just, I think it's erroneously being called grass. I think this should just be grass item. Yeah, so when you say grass item, it's not actually defined anywhere. It's just if you pass grass item to entity creator, it says, oh, you want grass. And grass has these other parameters, including, and it's just because the sprite is grass, it's just smaller. It's scaled down because I'm not like it's the same. It's actually the exact same method to create the droppable version versus the terrain version. I just changed the parameter based on, based on this, whether it should be a dynamic body or attached to the environment. Anyway, so let's try this again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to hit that craft button one more time. I'm going to see if those names line up. Okay, so first of all, nothing crashed, so that's good. And so here we see grass item and grass item are lining up. So that's perfect. Let's see, we want to go back to, here we go. So this actually sort of two phases here. This is another UI design thing. We want to make so if the player has, first we want to check to see if the player has all the items, and then we want to remove them all and add them to the, and then we basically destroy them. We want to remove them all and finish the item. But so we have to sort of go through this in two phases. We have to say, okay, do we have everything? And then if we have everything, go back and remove everything. Because if you don't, then you might, like, the UI aspect of this is if you click transfer, like eventually you'll want to do this where you transfer some of the items instead of all of the items. But I'm not quite there yet. I want to do baby steps. So here we say, well, let me leave that in there. Oh, crap. The other problem is, how do you go from, given that you have this name, I guess what you can do, this is really bad. I guess what you can do is you can iterate through everything in their inventory and see what they have. It's actually public. So I'm going to do that. Okay. So what we're doing here is for every ingredient name that you have, you want to see inventory.items so any of these items have item type component, and actually wait, okay, and is the item type come on. Oh, if you look at the grass thing here, this name field is actually not intrinsic to item type. It's intrinsic to this has name thing. I should probably split this up. If has item, let's return false. if item type is, oh, I think has name should, I think everything should have a name. I don't know why. You know what, I'm just gonna, I think I'll just do that. Item type has name. Okay, so because that's silly. If item type dot name equals ingredient name, return true, else return false. That's the same thing as saying return all this stuff. Okay, that's still pretty readable. I might be able to do using try_get here, which returns null if it doesn't have the item component. But I don't know. That doesn't always work. So this also doesn't take into account item stacks yet, because it should really be like, do all of your item stacks have, like, if you have one stack of 2 or one stack of 3, like that should still work. And this actually over corrects on that. It works too often. If not has item, then has all ingredient. Maybe it happens. Whatever. And equals false. Okay, I think that looks right. If has all ingredients, do this thing. So this has all ingredients. Actually, this is premature. What it needs to do now is iterate over everything again and do that thing I was talking about, where we have to remove everything now. So I still want to close. The window. I'm not actually sure that's happening right now. If you have all ingredients, then it should disappear. This might actually be better as a new method. Inventory.take. It doesn't let you specify like item type here. I really need a way of mapping back from a string to an item type, which is really like yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should focus more on getting, like, one of the problems with terrains is that strings have sort of permeated the code base a little bit, and they, like, it should be, the data model should be strings, but then when it gets ingested up into Java, it should just be the one type. Okay, so anyway, point being, item type like, I could just specify ingredient name quantity in here, but then I'd need to update this. This should really just be the item type. And I'm going to do something horrible, as usual. I'm just going to say item is that grass item, and assume that that's correct. Oh, I think it's being complainy. Fine, we'll do it your way. False equals false. If success. So take returns false if it's not able to take the requisite number of items, either because you don't have it or you don't have enough of it. So if success. This should always be true, probably. Like, it shouldn't get to this point unless... This is sort of like something goes wrong. So right now, the grass bed requires 5. I'm trying to remember where that's required, where that's specified. Of course, right here. That's confusing. Okay, I'm going to change this to 2. Oops, I need my grass. So the player is still the entire width. The player is still a meter wide, which is sort of gratuitous. But it means he gets stuck in pits, and it's super frustrating. Okay, great. There's exactly 2 grass over here. So if I place the grass bed and click craft, it says no dice. But the grass that was just here, the grass does not always drop. It's a probabilistic drops and stuff, and the grass does not always drop stuff. It doesn't always drop the seeds, or whatever this green stuff is supposed to be. Okay, I thought I picked up 2 already, but apparently not. Okay, so now if I click grass bed, I click craft, it works, and my grass is gone. So, great. It's been close to an hour, so I think I'm going to call it quits. But yeah, that's the start of a richer placeable crafting system. Eventually, I also want to make it so you can like add stuff in here. So because I have 1, if I click like deposit or something, then it disappears from here and it goes in here, and it should be a prerequisite to hitting craft anyway, but that's for next time. So thanks for watching.